In order, all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first we will do an oath of office for Tony and Justin. Put the chairs out of the way.
Well, gentlemen, congratulations. On behalf of the citizens of the city of Melrose, I'd like to congratulate you and welcome aboard to another 4 years on the council, as well as your first 4 years. So I'd like you to raise your hands and repeat after me. So I state your name.
I, Tony Clausen,
I, Justin Bieber,
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and to discharge faithfully the duties of the office of council member of the city of Melrose,
and to discharge faithfully the duties of the office of council member of the city of Melrose,
and to discharge faithfully the duties of the office of City Council of the City of Melrose,
to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
Congratulations. Look forward to working with you.
Come on, right here, shake your hands, Elliot. Congratulations. Yeah.
Well, thank you. If we could just have you guys sign right here, then we'll have Patty attest that you, all right, it's official. Thank you.
Is there any questions about approving the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, no changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Take a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Open forum, anybody want to say anything in this big group? Good to go. Consent agenda, approval of minutes, appointments for the following, the assistant weed inspector, city forester, animal control officer, and the designation of the following official newspaper, the animal shelter, resolution number 2017-1, resolution designating official depository of supplemental depositories for the city funds. And then E, ambulance department, EMT refresher training. Any questions? Can I get approval? Second? Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Reports, there are none. On to action items. All right, 6A1, acting mayor. Josh, you still want to be acting mayor?
I will do it.
Okay, good. Can we give you a motion? Okay, can I get a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Public Utilities Commission, one member at large is incumbent Eric Sainer is seeking reappointment.
Mr. Chair, just a quick comment here. What I would recommend is if there's only one person that gets nominated through this whole process at each time, I'd recommend that we just adopt them as a whole instead of each individual one as we go, just to help you.
Yeah, there's no questions with that. Dick, you still want to be in Public Utilities?
Yep.
Rep?
Yep.
Okay, I'm good at that. Planning and Zoning, Tony, you still good with it?
Yep.
Then we had Dave Bearshine that we wanted it. Okay. Mata, Jerome Devo was the only one, so him. Jenny was the Mata rep. Josh, did you want to do that?
Do that.
Okay. HRA was only Karen Dawsonson reapplied. then I am the council rep, and I still would like to be on that, if that's okay. Let's see here for the Parks and Rec Board. Justin, would you take that board? Okay, you're okay with that? All right. And then the Fire Relief Association, Tony was on that board last year, first time. You still want to do that?
Yeah, Jen, as long as Greg lets me know. Or when the time comes. Can do.
All right. So that's for the Melrose Fire Department Relief Association. And then the next one is for the Melrose Fire Relief Fund, which includes that 400 block. Jenny Mears was the representative for that. Anybody have a problem with me taking that board? Okay. Then, let's see here, should we just make an action before we go to eat?
Yes, please.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve all these?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. 6B, designation of the following, the grievance representative. Jeremy Kramer was the utilities. I was for the council. I'll still continue to do that unless there's any questions or concerns. Okay. Let's see. The ad hoc committee. Let's see here. Eric Sanger was for them, and Jenny Mears was for the city. Josh, you want to do that one? Okay. Any other questions on that one? All right. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Property disposition committee. Mike?
Yeah, this is a conversation that we've had over the past maybe year and a half. We have this organization, or this ad hoc, this advisory committee, this mayor's cabinet of sorts, just to help advise and strategize before we go before the various boards and commissions. And historically, this was consisted of all the board chairs. But over time, it's kind of hybrided, and people have stayed on after they left the council and left the commissions. And so the question has come up in regards to, well, maybe we should go back to the people that are currently the board chairs to represent this quasi-advisory committee. And looking at the structure and consulting with some various people and the history on it and where it came from, including Eric Sanger as the former mayor, we said this was very, very successful for his use when he was mayor 8 years ago. And so based on that, it's the recommendation that we go back to that same process of just using this ad hoc board chair as our primary sounding board before we start moving forward on any strategies and bringing it before the planning commission or the MATA boards or anything like that. And so that's kind of what we're looking for to do again, to restructure that to help this advisory committee to help formalize it. So it's not this kind of at will, just kind of give a little more structure.
So how many would board
It would be all the active boards, so it'd be the planning commission chair, the MATA board chair, the mayor, the utility chair. Am I missing a committee? Park and Rec board. And then if there's any other former board that would be created, then that person would sit on that board as well.
5-member board?
Yeah, you should. HR would be appropriate.
Do you have any problems or issues with quorums and stuff like that, or not quorums, but 3 of the council members being there?
That's why we want to be very careful about how we would structure something like this. Is that it's an ad hoc committee, so there is no set agenda. It's really just an advisory board. It's a sounding board to see if it makes sense. But we want to be very careful about that we're not breaking any rules in regards to open meetings or public meetings. This is just like our ad hoc committee here, where it's just a at-will, when needed type structure.
I guess I'm open for suggestions if you're happy with the way it was, or if we want to do it. I'm open to it.
I like the structure where it's more uniform, but I do have a concern of losing a lot of institutional memory with some of the people that were serving for a long time.
Well, and I think that
There's value to that.
I think there absolutely is. I think as needed, you could call in the former people that you think might be of interest, or may have some key history that we could reach out to. And again, it's really just more of a cabinet or an advisory council, coffee clutch type thing, that have some history and knowledge, but also these board chairs, it makes it valuable for the board chairs so they know that it's going to be coming to their committee and that they have a little read-in in regards to what it is before, if it's something that they think is appropriate or not.
I think it's fine. At least we'll have a concrete list of who's on that one. Rather than who's on it this year. We've got a call for that meeting.
Sounds good. Okay. Need a motion on that?
I think so. I think it would be helpful since we did it for the ad hoc and it's now it would be in the record that this is what we're doing.
Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Central Care plaque, Mike.
Tessa?
As part of the donation that the city council had approved last year, there will be a plaque that Central Care will put up in our wing. We're doing a separate one for the public utilities and a separate one for the city council. And it's basically ours to do a run. Pictures on it if you'd like. The utility commission has decided to just do the logo and Melrose Public Utilities. So the city council could do the same if you wish. If you'd like to have the council members from last year when it was approved, we can list council member names also. So it's really your call as to how you'd like to see it.
Personally, I think it's just, it's about the community, making the connection. It wasn't us, but the community did.
So would you like to mirror how the public utilities are and just have like the Melrose M with
Yeah.
City of Melrose under it?
Melrose or City of Melrose.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Anyone want our pictures on there?
Well, one of the options was presented as a bust of the mayor, the side bust of the
It
mayor.
looked like,
With the fire captain hat over the baby.
yes.
No. Gotta come back to hot someday.
So they did, we had a picture of the original one that they had in the old hospital and the city officials were on that one, but we can just leave it.
Just out of curiosity, what's gonna happen now?
They were gonna keep these, I believe, right?
They were trying to figure out where they would put
I
them.
just wanna make sure that that stays on display somewhere, whether they're not gonna
Because
display
it-
it, then we can have it back, so.
I believe it was still gonna be displayed.
I would make a note that we would, since it was Melrose's hospital at the time when they built that, and that's probably why they did do that. If they're not gonna keep them, if they ever demo that, this request, then it comes back to the historical society. Just wasn't gonna make a motion, but- All right. Tracy showed up in time. We are at 7A. Now with multifamily.
Mr. Mayor, I'd recommend that we close the meeting to discuss strategies in regards to the Melrose multifamily / craft lot discussion. So we would need a motion to close the meeting, and then I'll
Can I get a motion to close the meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. It is 6. Jeez.
new business, German students. I'll turn this one to Patty. Go ahead, Patty.
Fawn is just looking to, last year the city hosted the German students and the teachers. So I'm looking for that again this year. He's got 2 dates, either Monday, February 20th or Tuesday, February 21st at 6 o'clock p.m. So
Tuesday, you got department's meeting on Monday.
that would be,
Is that any trouble for anybody?
I prefer Tuesday. I think that's President's Day, isn't it?
yeah.
Monday, I mean.
I think it is.
Yeah, so that's the first thing.
Celebrate on President's Day.
Well, you know, who's president?
Good call.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and schedule that with Stefan.
And just so you know, Tessa and Stacy and Patty are working on a small gift to the German students again. And so they're looking at something similar to what they did last year, right? That's my understanding.
Great. All right. Then we're on to 9, informational items. Great River Regional Library Semi-Annual Report, the 400 block update. Justin, you want to make a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Okay, can I get a second?
That's right.
All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Opposed, motion carried.
Good job, Justin.
Close your first meeting. That's it. It's, yeah.
Oh. Special meeting. All right, so that's done. Let's go to 6:30 meeting. All right.
6:30 meeting.
So we need to open this one in, just like we usually do.
Sure. Okay, call the meeting to order, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Can you get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. All right, action items, police officer, Craig.
Yeah, I've asked Craig and Diane to really take the lead on this in regards to options. We have a law enforcement officer who's being deployed, and so we with a small department like we have, we wanted to present a couple of ideas before you to see what your thoughts were, and we have some numbers to go back and forth, and Craig has some ideas to discuss, so.
Yeah, basically our options, when Officer McDonald has had extended military training in the past, we just worked with our part-time staff to carry what we can, or full-time has made adjustments to the schedule and work extended shifts or stretches. So this being up to 400 days, it's not quite feasible this time around. So we're looking at several options as far as what could or couldn't be chances or opportunities we could work with. Using part-time staff is still one of our options. I did speak with all of our part-time officers, 2 of them who have full-time jobs as well, so there's some difficulties there. Our third part-time officer said that they would be willing to work 3 shifts a week because they do have a family business they run as well as another part-time job as well. So what we have for part-time staff generally works real well for us, but in a situation like this, there's some limitations there. We'd have to get creative on scheduling and work some stretches to make everything get covered. I did talk with the area chiefs to see if using some of their full-time staff would work. Some nice benefits there would be is that they carry the license, they take care of all the training. The only thing we have to do is put uniforms on and teach them what Melrose looks like, and they're already cops know what they're doing. Also limitations there regarding scheduling. SOC Center, we work with quite a bit. They work 5 or 6 day stretches. Once that's done, they get a few days off and then it's back to it. So some of their officers are showing interest, but it's always one of those things where with the interest lasts for that long period of time. So there is some policy issues with each city. Albany doesn't have a restricted policy on their part-time. Their full-time officers working a part-time job. SOC Center has some language that they're going to look into further. So there could be some restrictions as far as how much they could work if they were available to do it. One of the conversations that Mike and I had, and we talked with Diane and we talked with Tessa, is potentially doing a temporary full-time position. Our hopes was that that third part-time officer would take on that role. But like I said, when I talked with them, family business and everything else like that, they didn't feel that they'd be able to do that, as well as some limitations on the time off they'd like to have as opposed to the time off they would earn and be able to take it on. Otherwise, the last option we put out there is hiring back officer number 5 in the 2017 year. Things would be copacetic. They'd just take over Officer McDonald's pay, benefits, all those sorts of things as he'd be gone. 2018 and beyond is when the concerns start to come in. How would that be funded? What else do we do with those sorts of things? Definitely make scheduling a much bigger advantage for us, not only for this year, but as well as for 18 and beyond. having officer number 5 available to make adjustments. So those are the considerations we're at right now. I did talk with the sheriff's office to potentially contract the hours, where they would send a deputy, their squad car, they'd come in and work the hours that Officer McDonald took gone. They contracted $55 an hour. Talked with Diane, we're substantially less than that. So it'd be a cost measure that we'd have to decide if we want to endure that or not, working with the sheriff's office. And they haven't come on board with that fully either. Their staff wasn't all around to discuss if it was even an option. I know in the past there's been some difficulties working with the current police department and then staffing backfills and that sort of thing, because there's different ways of doing business slightly between the departments. So those are considerations.
All right.
So Craig, the part-time officer solution is really the only option that you have immediately available to you.
Right.
And so the way I understood it, you and I talked about it with Diane a little bit, and you can get, so like so an Officer McDonald, he works an average of 5 shifts a week, is that correct? Or maybe 6 shifts a week on average?
The stretches are 6 and 7.
6 and 7.
So it'd be either 4 shifts a week or 5 shifts a week, depending on what part of the schedule we're in.
All right, so you're guaranteed, you're semi-guaranteed 3, and then you would have to find, with the other part-timers, those other 3
Right.
3 per week to cover. Okay. All right. So we're,
In the worst case scenario, we go, obviously, go to no coverage at times. No, I mean, that's like the,
Right.
obviously the worst.
Right, there was some discussion about that the last time around when we were working that longer stretch. I'm not in favor of that, but obviously, like I said, worst case scenario. There are times when it's okay.
Yeah, for a couple hours at a time.
Right.
Or something, but you want to start doing 12 hours.
Right, or taking full shifts off here and there, so yeah, it can be problematic, not only for call out for the officer that is on call for that period of time, and as well as for just coverage in general. Okay.
Dick?
It's a tough one to call on this one. I don't know what would be the best way. $55 an hour, that includes car, gas, and some other
Yep.
expenses. They do that?
Nope, that's, covers all their insurances and all of their vehicle expenses on the officer.
What would our full burden be?
33.
Yeah, about $33 an hour, and then I figured in about 50 cents an hour is what it costs us to operate our car, and then just ballpark, I put $1 per hour on for vehicle insurance and anything extra, so it'd be about $36 an hour, $37 an hour.
How often we, it's probably, maybe it's totally relevant, but how often we switch cars every 4 years, every 4 years?
Right now, we would be, with the
Obviously,
take-home
there's
program,
types
right.
of vehicle.
If we went back to the 5-officer department, how we did in the past, the chief had a take-home car, and then we had 2 cars that were rotated between the 4 road officers,
Right.
and those were going at an every 4-year rate. So it would still be consistent to what we have set up now, where every 2 years we get a different car. It's just now it would be a shared car and a shared car that would get rotated that often, as opposed to 4 cars being spread out over that period of time, and 2 cars being spread out.
Is there any on public safety, reserves? Any chance of bringing some reserves on to patrol or anything like that, or?
They don't have any law enforcement
Right.
abilities.
They would have to be full now.
Right, so they'd be an extra set of eyes, which is a benefit. The problem is if they get into a situation where they come across something that's oh shucks, oh darn.
Yeah, can't do
They
it.
see somebody in uniform, they expect something to happen as opposed to.
But the difference of hiring like a full-time officer and then having to, in a year or 2, not need them again, so then what do we do? Compared to hiring the Stearns counties, say they would be willing to do that. So the cost for hiring Stearns County is an additional $40,000 per year,
Right.
about.
Right.
But he eliminates any problems trying to hire a full-time officer and then letting him go.
Right, right, yeah, we wouldn't have to worry about any union issues or
Are there any?
But you're not gonna, are you guaranteed to keep that sheriff in town?
When they are on contract, the only time they do leave is for an emergency situation. They do contract with other holding fort, I believe St. Stephen, the St. Augustine are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. When they're on contract, they are there. I know they get drawn away for, if there's an emergency situation, accident, or domestic situation. They will leave, but then they return and finish contract, either that same shift or they add it on later in the week for the total number of hours that they're supposed to be in that city.
Are there any chances that there's a retired officer out there, say, like JJ?
To reactivate his license would be more,
Yeah, maybe not JJ, but
Right.
somebody.
Sock Center has that as one of their part-time officers, and at this point, it's not benefiting them very much.
They just
Once
don't
you
want
get a
to.
taste of the retired life, you think you want to come back, and then it's not exactly on the terms you expect it to be. Yeah. So.
Maybe at the coffee shop partner, actually.
Is there a combination of these that can suffice, and say you use your part-time officers to cover the 3 shifts and you take the moonlight option of the neighboring cities to cover the other 3 shifts?
Scheduling would be the biggest issue out of that, but that's a possibility. Or, if it came down to the contracting portion too, and we only say, Stearns County, we need you for 10 or 20 hours a week instead of 40. Those options would be out there too. You can make a combination of all, it's just a matter of scheduling far enough in advance.
Good luck.
What are the chances of you hiring someone for a year?
Well, like I said, our expectation was that our part-time officer would pick that up, but that isn't an option. I did speak with the other 2 part-time officers as far as maybe taking your leave from their jobs or anything like that. Long-term, it doesn't benefit them. Short-term, it's a good financial push for the year, but then after that, to either return to their job or hopefully get their job back would be a different situation.
One of the scenarios that we did talk about, and I know this is a hard one to talk about, but Diane and I had a conversation today in regards to what does it cost for a full-time officer, mid-career officer, and that number was what again, Diane?
I think about 75 or 76,000.
Including benefits, it's like $75,000. So one of the scenarios that was floated was go back to the 5-person department, reduce the vehicle scenario, so 3 vehicles versus the number of vehicles that we have today. So the challenge is, this year you're fine, you can pay for it. 18, that would have to come out of cash. 19 out of cash. The year 2020, you have a bond retiring, and then you could start paying for it that way without any additional impact to the general. So that's the other scenario that we talked about. And that brings up some other issues and longer, other additional conversations, but that's what the dollars actually look like. So, and there's the benefit of that scenario is that we wouldn't have this challenge, because it seems like that we're always having this challenge of trying to cover staffing situations and vacations. How do you cover that type of scenarios? So that would be a solution for that, and Craig wouldn't be putting in these 60-hour weeks sometimes where he's been stepping up and covering some of these crazy shifts. So it's a scenario, but there's a financial cost to that.
If you maybe use up your PTO?
There's a lot of days off in December. That's the only way on the bill. There's a lot of people burned out when they go in December. My hope is my scheduled vacation stay in place now, so that
It is getting tougher.
and that's part of the disadvantage of the 4-officer department. We're able to make coverage, it limits vacation sick time in situations like this one. With the 5th officer, we could drop to a 4-officer schedule and make it work, because that's what they've done. But there's limitations when there's only 4 of us on board.
I was just thinking that, with the possibility of a lot of development taking place in the next year or 2, and a lot of new people being in town and different things to watch and stuff like that, for the next year or 2, if that development takes place, it'd be probably important to have an extra officer here to help cover some of that. There's lots of new people, different things, issues that come up because of this equipment out there. I don't know.
And funding-wise, another option that was big in the early 2000s and late 90s was, it's called the COPS grant, where it was phased in. It was $75,000, or 75% was paid for by the COPS grant, then went to 50, 25, and the city picked up the burden after that, basically allowing hiring of departments and government entities to carry that load. That's a hit or miss. It does pop up once in a blue moon, but it's not funded as well as it used to be. I did look into it a bit now, and it's sketchy as if it still exists right now. So I haven't gotten a straight answer if that's even a possibility.
What are you looking for, direction? Or
Do you have a recommendation?
there you go.
I have hopes.
Realistically, what's your recommendation?
I wish I
Knowing what the budget is set at.
If we could, if there's council consideration in 18 and 19 to float it with cash or to make some adjustments here, there, or wherever else, my recommendation would be to go with the fifth officer. My hope would be is that we still carry part-time and do what we could. I'm definitely a person that you work with what you got as opposed to ask for the moon. Maybe the realities are is that we need to get that shuttle up in the air. I don't know. It's difficult.
Officer McDonald is going to be leaving, or
He leaves the end of this month. He leaves mid-month or so. He'll be done.
and if you did have a new hire, how much time does it take to get him up and running?
Well, the benefit if it would be a full-time position, not a temporary full-time position, one of our part-time officers would leave their full-time employee as a full-time officer and come work up here.
So you do have somebody that,
We have somebody in-house that worked the stretch when Officer McDonald was gone for 4 months of training. He worked for us for those 4 or 5 months, whatever it was, and things worked out fine. He worked in Belgrade Police Department now for the last 18 months or so. And when I spoke with him about it, I said, yeah, absolutely. I put my notice in down there, helping as much as I could, but
He'd be up and running during that.
right. He's also a member of the community, involved in the community with a couple organizations already. But he doesn't want to leave the stability of having a full-time job either, to take a temporary position for a year, basically.
It's a tough call. As a business owner, what would you do?
As a business person?
If one of your employees left for a year,
Well, like I say, to me, with the stuff that's going on possibly in the next couple of years, I would have no problem as far as the fifth one.
I agree.
and there are ways to fund this. I mean, at the end of each year, we budget, like for example, health insurance. We budget for health insurance. For me, I don't take the city's health insurance because I can get mine through the National Guard. And so that's a substantial dollar savings to the city. And what we've done historically with those funds, as an example, we then come to you in February, I think it is, after we get the rough audit numbers, and we'll say, let's reallocate those funds to X, Y, and Z for capital items. That could be one way to fund it without, the 2018s and 2019s, without having to dip into cash as much as you thought. But again, it's a year afterwards, and you're operating in the negative during that time. But there are ways to potentially fund that scenario in those following years. This year, you're good.
And related to a funding issue as well, Tessa and I talk right now, we put whatever the dollar amount was away for cars and equipment and capital improvements and those sorts of things. And some of those monies could be adjusted. We don't have another big purchase or vehicle purchase till 2019, so some of that money could just be redirected. There is a fair amount in the fund now. It could be reduced quite well, at least initially, until that 2020 fund would fall off, just as some of the things we talked
And even at 2019, does, that vehicle have to get upgraded?
It'll be interesting because we just started this take-home car program. Right now, the oldest vehicle has about 42,000 miles on it. That officer's putting on about 15,000 miles a year. with another officer coming in, even if we are conservative with 12,000 miles a year, basically we're just doubling the mileage on the cars that are out and about, so it'd probably still be every 4 year cycle, that car cycle, and that's when it just be every 2 years we just replace the road covers. And that's what we were doing before we went to this take-home car program.
Is that just a mileage thing, or?
That was part of it. Yeah, they get up over that 100,000 mile mark and we start getting it over there.
I'm just thinking if you can, if a person can hold off 1 year on it, on a car, one more year, that may
Well, that might be something to track.
fill some of that other cost.
As vehicles improve, I mean, yeah, it used to be years and years ago, 100,000, you didn't want that vehicle.
Right.
The top one we have now has got 240, and it just keeps going, yeah. So, is it, and obviously it needs to be much more reliable than that. But is it something we can look at that? Because I don't mind the idea of a full-time hire. I mind the additional costs that we have, and if we can offset those, I can be on board in a heartbeat, but we need some mechanism in place to make this neutral, or at least less painful.
It's going to be hard, I'll be honest with you, it's going to be hard to find, using the number of 75,000, which is a mid-career officer here, it's going to be hard to find that. But I think realistically with the, like I talked about, like my health insurance savings, half of that I think is pretty realistic. And when you start looking at the squad cars and stuff like that, and how you can maximize those dollars and stretch that out a little bit, I think 35 is a realistic number, half, 50% of that number is realistic. But otherwise, it would have to come out of cash. I just don't know how else we could do it. Tyson and I talked about it, and Diane and I talked about the administrative side of it. It's the hard part.
All right. What do you guys want to do?
Do we take action on that tonight? Is that the idea?
It would make it easier as far as the end of the month, but we do have scheduling basically already in place for the first few shifts. And then we can, I make a schedule for the whole year so I can really just start enabling things for the rest of the year. So when we have to be tonight, the only benefit would be a jump up if this officer would take that position.
Is there a way that you could do then, if we could table it, is there a way you could take these options, spreadsheet them out, show the cost for the next 3 years through 19 to 20 when the bond falls off, and then possibly some ideas to say offsetting and what those dollars would look like?
I think so. Put it on paper that you guys can actually look at.
Well, then we can see numbers.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
that's,
Yep, that's fair.
Alright, great.
And then for wages, we just do like 8% increases for each year.
just for the chief.
Just saying.
This is not housing, no. What, do you need a motion to table?
Yeah, actually, we should. Bring it back at the next meeting.
Bring it back with the said,
Does that give you guys enough time? That's in 2 weeks. Does that give you guys enough?
Okay, the 19th meeting we should, so.
Okay, all right.
Okay, motion to table.
that's my motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Motion carried.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Greg. Fire department, police reserve wages.
Sure. This is a conversation that we had regarding the fire department. We've had a lot of different discussions in regards to wages and benefits for these guys. It's been 5 years, well, it's been more than 5 years since there's been some type of adjustment. About 4 years ago, the city entered into a PERA contract where the state manages the retirement fund. And that was locked in a 5-year window at $1,500 as a volunteer gift. And then they also receive compensation for their call-out pay. I think we got the schedule here. Their call-outs, their meeting pay, then also the chief, the assistant chiefs also receive some type of modest compensation. Diane did a really good job at pulling together our costs in regards to some averaging. It's really hard to figure out, who's an apples to apples department. We did the best we could in regards to these numbers. Because it's hard to say in regards to how many runs do they do and what type of equipment do they have and what type of training do they go to. We just don't have that type of data to leverage. So what we did do though is we do have this data here which shows you their average wages, the wages that they receive for those leadership positions. We've had a conversation with the chief, and the chief has then subsequently had conversations with all of his assistants and training officers, and they're of the opinion that they don't want an adjustment. What they would rather see is an increase to the city's contribution towards their pension. And that was also uniform for the firemen as well, as for their run call and their meeting call. The chief had the conversation with his members and said, what do you guys think? Do you think that this covers our, where we're at? And the answer was yes, but they would like to see an adjustment to their retirement pension. And so, taking that into consideration, we tried to come up with a couple different scenarios to offset the cost for that. And we looked at a 12% adjustment, 11, 10, 9, and 8% adjustment. Right now, we contribute, is it $5,700 right now towards the retirement contribution. And so, when we say 12% adjustment, it's not a big financial number, but it's a 12% number. So, and where we got that from, that was based upon the last 3 years of how we did the ambulance adjustments as well. We did that using that 12% number. And so that's what we did here for the ambulance, for the fire department. And so if we were to take that number, it would be like a $2,500 increase pledge to the city's budget, to the fire department for their contribution. And then we came down to 11 and 10 and 9 and 8 percentages with those dollars accordingly, which are laid in front of you. So having looked at that, from a staff perspective, and the way this would work is that that $5,700 would go up to $8,240 pledge each year, and then that would then subsequently be paid for by general fund dollars as well as our partnership with our townships. The townships would also agree to that number as well, to their pledge for that contribution. So it's not a $2,500 all city, it's also part of that township contribution. So now that would be this pledge. And one of the other things that we looked at too is on the 5th year, this is a different thing now, a different animal, is the PERA contribution of that $1,500 that I mentioned that they receive for their volunteerism. According to the fund, we've asked PERA after 5 years, you can increase that. 4 years ago when we entered into this agreement, we were on the cusp of being able to give them almost $1,800 to $1,900 a year for their contribution because the fund was really close to doing that. However, we were being fiscally conservative at that time, and we settled at $1,500. But now looking at the fund and how well it's been doing and where it's at, that number, we've asked PERA to project out a couple different scenarios to go actually provide that $1,900 a year. And we're believing that that might be able to happen. But we need to get those numbers from PERA, and that would be at a future meeting, which would be effective January 1 of 2018. So, but what will be happening in February, the City Council will be adopting its 2018 budget for the fire department. So I'm trying to get these numbers for PERA then, but I don't know if we'll have it in time by that meeting. So we'll have to make an adjustment to that if we decide to raise that contribution, which is no money out of the city's pocket. It's out of the generated fund out of PERA and the contribution from the insurance proceeds and so on. So having said that, the question before the City Council tonight is simply, what type of does the council feel that there should be an additional contribution towards their retirement fund, which would be this $5,700 plus whatever this percentage you feel is appropriate?
That's per fireman?
No, this is going into the large kitty, into their investment pool.
Per fireman.
No, that's lump sum.
One lump
It's
sum?
one payment.
For the department?
Yeah. So what happens each year, the insurance proceeds, like you and I have our house insurance, I believe it's like $36,000 if I'm not mistaken off the top of my head, that gets given to the city. Does that sound right? Yeah, it's like $36,000 gets put into this fund with our insurance proceeds from our house. Then the city pledges $5,700 as an additional contribution, just to ensure that it's, the fund is growing and there's enough fund in there. Because the city is an obligor, we guarantee that $1,500 goes towards those firemen every year. So if the fund isn't doing well, the city has to pay in. And as long as I've been here, I think we had to pay in once, which was like $12 into that fund to offset that year. But every other year, it's been doing well. And I've been here for 6 years now, in April, March. So I had a couple of conversations with some people offline about this as well.
So we have obviously 7 departments here that we're comparing to ours on a wage basis.
Yes.
And there's, I'm guessing, no way for us to get information from them on what they do for their pensions.
See, and that's super hard. And the reason that's hard, and it's hard to use that average because, say, Cold Spring, or Sauk Centers, our insurance contribute, it's all based upon insurance proceeds and how much you can generate from that fund. And that's how that's how that $1,500 determined. It depends on their interest dollars that comes in from that.
And is there any other way to know that, let's say Avon, Bruton, or Cold Spring hasn't done the same thing? Let's say Bruton, for example, they're at $10, which is fairly low for a run pay, that they haven't also done kick in to the pension instead of wages. So that the comparison, while apples to apples, is really apples and oranges.
It is. It really boils down to this is what the city can afford to be able to provide. And that's what the question is and this is the conversation when it comes to wages and benefits is that, Melrose, this is what Melrose is and this is what we can compensate for. And this is a neutral, the way that we're proposing to do this is actually cash neutral besides the $5,700, that is coming out of the general fund coffers and the taxes. So that's what it's really costing to fund this compensation. Because otherwise their run pay, that's paid for by the calls. So there's an accident, they get a compensation. If there's a fire, they get compensation. And that's how that gets funded. But there's usually a shortage in regards to capital and equipment and funding. It's a service. So
you have 12% of cost of it?
Well, it's $2,500.
Well, right, but the funds are there.
Yes, yeah, $2,500 the city can, yes.
And they haven't had anything other than that contribution to PRA or whatever that fund is for the last 4 years they haven't
I
got.
think it's been longer than that. 4 years ago, we made an adjustment. I think it was $1,200, then we went to $1,500. And then 10 years before, we had some numbers here.
Yeah.
Some training budget dollars. Like 12 years ago, there was, before Jeremy Kramer, the fire chief, got on there, they put money into training budget versus their salary budget. And then that training budget actually went down like 4 years ago because of some way that funding was able to make it work. So
In 2006, it was at 2,700. In 2016, it went up to 57, somewhere in there, but
yeah.
5,700. The salaries haven't been adjusted since 2007. I have no problem, again, even at the 12%, can we get on something regular? Can we get on something regular?
Yeah, we can.
We don't want to get caught like the ambulance.
Well, and then even this is, 10 years, 11 years on salary pay and whatever, so let's adjust it largely now and then let's just get, so we don't have to do another 12% and whatever, and do a percent a year or whatever that is. Whatever staff can come up with for it.
We sure can do that. And that makes it easier. And what's happened historically, this is a volunteer department, and the firemen are not asking for this. I want to be very clear about that. The firemen did not ask for this. It's because of the other conversations that we had that this is why this is coming. So there you go. But I think it's definitely needed. It's when you look at the numbers, and it's been how many years? And I think it's fair. It's a very modest adjustment when you look at the actual dollar.
So you need a motion.
Yes, we would.
A motion to go to the 12% increase.
second.
Let's go have to run this part. Do we have a second? Justin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You can still run.
I understand.
We get broken rules there.
All right, and then next would be Craig for police reserves. Okay.
Yep.
We're in a similar boat with our police reserve officers as far as wages and that sort of thing. We're touching all of them since we've had those discussions the last month or so here. Our reserves do not have a retirement plan. They're hourly employees. Last year, they had a total of 18 hours. We budget about $1,000 a year for training, salaries, any other issues that come up with them. So they're $10.20 times 18. Got them a case of popcorn for the Friday night, but it's, the hours just aren't there for them to work, so otherwise, probably a bigger one.
Got to put in more time than most of them.
So, we're comfortable with whatever the council decides. If you want to carry through with the 12% option like you've been talking about here, or if there's a 10% adjustment, whatever you feel is comfortable, it'd be extremely minimal just because of the few hours they do put in on a paid basis. They do have their 12 hours a quarter of ride-along, which is volunteer that they still maintain. So, just your consideration.
Everybody thinking?
What was the rate paying again?
10-20.
Do you have any questions? Joseph? You done about it?
Is there, Craig, do you have a recommendation to make any modest adjustment to that?
I'd say if we're gonna follow suit with the fire department, they would definitely take 12%. But as far as,
It's, here, let me do
yeah,
it.
I think it's 30 cents or something like
Like
that.
their salary is 10.50.
Okay, it's, yeah.
No, I mean, you'd have to add the 12% to the 10.50, not 10.20.
Okay, so it's $10.50
Right
times
now.
1.12 equals. They would like that.
Yeah. I was just gonna say.
Yes, we'll point that out.
It would be $1.26 an hour increase at 12%.
Yeah. It's not like we really use up.
No, so if you're talking, so if you 18 hours you said you gave them last year?
That's what they got your last box.
$22.68. Then there's taxes and stuff that come on there too.
You're still will be well under your budget.
Yeah. So, can I get a motion to approve, please?
I'll make that motion.
At 12%, okay, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Motion to adjourn?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I didn't.
So I make, can I get a motion? Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried, we are done.
Obviously.